Hello, this is Coding Gicha for full-stack developers. Here are some Vim settings and packages that improve Vim's readability. Let's open the .vim-rc file in Vim. Showing line numbers makes it easier to navigate to specific lines. You can also adjust the minimum width of the line numbers to your preference. The default tab width is 8 spaces, but you can reduce it to 4 spaces. Showing whitespace helps maintain a consistent indent pattern and makes it easier to identify unnecessary trailing whitespace at the end of lines. You can also distinguish the line where the cursor is located. The formatting for readability-related settings may appear differently depending on the color scheme. I prefer the Haba Max color scheme. In Vim's default settings, which don't use a color scheme, the formatting for readability-related settings is too prominent, often drawing more attention than the main text. Let's comment out the color scheme settings. Haba Max generally supports a subdued color scheme for readability-related settings. Since only the cursor line numbers use a slightly more intense color, I've added some settings, but I'll comment out this setting as well. I'll exit Vim and restart. The line numbers are convenient, but they're a bit too intense and distracting. The cursor line is also underlined, which draws too much attention. The whitespace symbol's color is also too intense. Let's change the line numbers to a more subdued color. I'll also change the cursor line's color to a more subdued color. These colors are based on the Haba Max color scheme settings. To distinguish the cursor line numbers from the cursor line, I'll set them to bold and change the color to a more subdued color. The cursor line numbers are also based on the Haba Max color scheme, but the foreground color is a bit too intense, so I've changed the foreground color to a more subdued color. The whitespace symbol's color is the special key color, and I'll also change this based on the Haba Max color scheme settings. Save and confirm the changes immediately. The line numbers aren't too flashy. The cursor line has also been changed to a more subdued design. The whitespace symbol has also been changed to a more subdued design. The visual distraction from the secondary symbols has been reduced, allowing you to focus on the main text while still benefiting from the readability settings. As mentioned earlier, these settings are based on the Haba Max color scheme, so most of them will be applied automatically when using the Haba Max color scheme. I won't comment out the settings for the cursor line number alone. Since the cursor line number is also based on the Haba Max color scheme, you can simply change the foreground color to a more subdued one. However, all settings are included so that the overall cursor line number settings remain the same when switching to a different color scheme. The special key is also a Haba Max color scheme setting, so I'll comment it out. I'll save and check the changes immediately. Vim's default colors can be a bit flashy, but Haba Max's subtle changes make for a less cluttered workflow. In particular, I've left the readability settings for Haba Max as comments because they're comfortable colors that don't stand out against various color schemes. Let's check the Vim packages installed with vim-es. Vim-indent-guides is a package that visually displays indent guide. If it's not installed, you can easily install it with vim-e. Let's reopen the .vim-rc file in Vim. To use Vim-indent-guides, you must configure it to automatically activate when Vim starts up. To see the initial appearance of Vim-indent-guides after installing it, I'll comment out the related settings. Vim-indent-guides alternates between odd and even indentation guides, and you can also configure the color for this. I'll also comment out the color setting. Let's reopen the .vim-rc file. Let's examine the tab indentation. Vim-indent-guides further distinguishes indentation guide with the background color. Let's open a file indented with spaces. Let's make the function that implements space-based indentation visible on the screen, and then use ZT to move the cursor to the top of the screen. Tabs are already displayed as tab symbols in the indentation, distinguishing indents. However, spaces are only displayed as trailing spaces. Therefore, the vim-indent-guides display helps greatly with indentation. However, it also displays the entire 4 spaces of the indent guide, which can be a bit frustrating. When indenting with tabs, the indentation is already clearly defined, but the additional background color only exacerbates the frustrating feeling. I'll be revising vim-indent-guides to make it more refined. Let's set the indent guide size to 1. I'll disable guides for indents using tabs. Let's change the indent guide color to make it less noticeable. I'll apply a subdued color to the odd and even indentations. The background color of the cursor line in the Haba Max color scheme, supported since Vim 9, is the same as the background color applied to the even indentation in vim-indent-guides, causing an indistinct line when the cursor lines overlap. You can solve this by changing the background color to a color like 234 or 237. However, since the indent guide size is 1, you can also use the same color as the background color of the odd indentation. The foreground color of the special key in the Haba Max color scheme is 240, so I'll use that color. Let's quit Vim and restart. Areas indented with tabs are no longer affected by vim-indent-guides, which has reduced the frustrating feeling. The guides in documents indented with spaces have become cleaner. They no longer conflict with the background color of the cursor line. I'm currently using a custom command that prevents unnecessary characters from being copied when dragging with the mouse. Disabling vim-indent-guides would also be helpful. Of course, since the indentation guides are in the background, they won't be copied. However, when copying to HTML, they will be copied as well. When writing programs, you often use nested parentheses. Let's learn about Rainbow, which colors nested parentheses differently. If it's not installed, you can easily install it with Vim.EA. You must enable Rainbow to use this feature. Packages that colorize nested parentheses, like Rainbow, conflict with Nerd Tree. You should disable it in Nerd Tree. Rainbow colors all nested parentheses, but it doesn't display the parentheses matching the cursor position. This is because Vim already provides this feature by default. However, the background color of the parentheses matching the cursor position is cyan, so if the cursor is placed on a parentheses with a color close to cyan, it becomes unreadable. I solved this problem by changing the background color to 52, but I'll change it back to the default cyan and check. Starting with Vim 9, this issue has been somewhat resolved by displaying the foreground color as color 199, not just the background color. I'll remove the foreground color and check again. I'll save and apply the changes immediately. Let's check this in a new, blank file. Let's try nesting parentheses. Coloring each pair of nested parentheses is thanks to Rainbow. Matching parentheses at the cursor's location is a basic feature of Vim, but pairs of parentheses with colors close to cyan become difficult to read. Since Vim 9, the foreground color is also displayed as color 199, so even if the background color is close to cyan, the parentheses are somewhat distinguishable. However, the background color is too saturated, drawing attention and disrupting concentration. The Haba Max color scheme solves this by removing the background color and adding a bold style. I'll add this to the Haba Max settings and change the background color to a less saturated color. Save and apply the changes immediately. Let's check this again in a new, blank file. Let's try nesting parentheses. Matching parentheses at the cursor's location doesn't affect Rainbow's parentheses display color, and they are clearly distinguishable. I'm going to quit Vim. Matchit.zip is a package that quickly moves to the opposite position of a pair of parentheses. Matchit.zip can also be easily installed with vim-e. Open the .vimrc file. You must enable the file type plugin to use Matchit.zip. Open an HTML file. Matchit.zip quickly moves to the opposite position of a pair of parentheses. The % key is used to move. Braces move the first time but tend to not work properly after that. Other pairs of parentheses move smoothly with the % key. In addition to parentheses matching, it also supports HTML tag matching. Move the cursor to the character inside the angle bracket and press the % key to move to the opposite tag. When you run vim-es, you'll see that the vimrc.vim file has been modified. As the color scheme has been changed to Haba Max, which is supported starting with Vim 9, some settings have been modified to match Haba Max. I will reflect the changed Vim settings to the Git repositories by running vim-ep. Thank you for watching.